Welcome to the China Influencer Marketing Podcast. Each week, we speak with top influencers, marketers, and brands who share their experiences, strategies, and tactics for influencer marketing in China. Here's your host, Lauren Hallanan.
Hi everyone, Lauren here. In this episode of the China Influencer Marketing Podcast, we chat with Jing Daily Associate Editor Yiling Pan. She and I really talked a lot about consumer behavior in this episode, and I loved hearing her perspective. A little side note, as you might know, I am a frequent contributor to Jing Daily, and I actually recently helped them launch a new newsletter called the WeChat Edition, which, as you might guess, is all about WeChat. Even though the newsletter is part of Jing Daily, it is not specifically focused on luxury like Jing Daily is. It includes important WeChat news, in-depth reports, and case studies of noteworthy WeChat campaigns. Unlike other Jing publications, this is a curated newsletter, so we will be including content not only from Jing, but from other top resources around the web. So if you've got a report with some WeChat insights, or you're interested in writing a guest post, feel free to email me at lauren@jingdaily.com. Anyway, back to my conversation with Yiling. She had some really great insights on consumer behavior, including why she thinks that a lot of consumer trends in China all lead back to anxiety issues. I also asked her who she thinks are more influential, celebrities or influencers. And are Chinese millennial consumers really as important as everyone keeps saying they are? We also discussed what she thinks about the fact that many top luxury brands seem to work with the same few China influencers over and over and over again. It was a great conversation, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. Before we start, I just want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Park Lu. Park Lu is China's premier influencer marketing platform. Learn more at parklu.com. And I really think that you should go to parklu.com because they have two great resources free resources that everyone should be taking advantage of. They recently came out with a KOL Budget Calculator. It's a free resource right on the website. I don't think you need to sign up. And you can use this tool to, as it says, figure out your budget for KOLs. It's wonderful. It provides so much transparency. Obviously, it's not completely accurate, but it can just give you an idea of approximate budgets depending on the size of the KOL and which platform they're on. So definitely recommend you check out that resource. Also, what a lot of people don't know is that if you sign up for a free account at Park Lu, you can gain access to their analytics tools. Obviously, if you have a paid account, then you have access to more tools, more functions. But even just a free account, the analytics tools are amazing. They're awesome. They're really, really useful. I use them all the time when I am writing articles and doing research. So really suggest that you go over to parklu.com and you check out those two resources. And now on to our interview with Yiling. Hi, Yiling. Welcome to the China Influencer Marketing Podcast. I'm really excited to have you on. We've had a lot of different people on the podcast so far. We've had influencers, we've had a lot of people from like marketing and ad agencies. But I think you as a writer, writing about a lot of trends that are going on in China, you're going to be able to provide a different perspective than some of our other guests. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I'm really honored to be invited to this podcast, and I hope what I said will be helpful for your audience. Yeah.
I'm sure it will be. So, do you mind taking a moment to just introduce yourself and what you do? What are you up to these days?
Sure. So I'm Yiling Pan, and I am the associate editor of Jing Daily. So Jing Daily is the online publication that covers the luxury business market in China. And yeah, we report everything happens in the Chinese market related to luxury. So what I do is I just write story for Jing Daily almost every day and help them manage like newsletters and other stuff. So
how did you start working for Jing Daily? Did you always want to be a writer? Is this something that you were always interested in, or how? I'm just curious how you ended up doing this job.
Sure. Okay. So actually, I was here in United States pursuing my master degree in New York City. So after graduated, I wanted to really find a job, and here I didn't really want to go back to China. So before, I already had like 1 year like reporting experience at Thomson Reuters in Shanghai. So I think I would just want to like continue being a journalist and expanding my portfolio. So I started to look for jobs in the journalism and media industry. Then it turned out Jing Daily is a perfect fit to my skill set. They're looking for like native Chinese people who can understand the market, offer the local perspective to the readers. So that was how I started, and I was an intern, growing from the intern and becoming associate editor now.
Yeah, that's really impressive, and I'm always impressed at the fact that you're doing all of this writing in English, which I think is, I know from experience working in China, it's speaking and reading and, or just writing emails in another language is one thing, but having to write articles is completely different. So I think that must have taken a bit of time to gain that skill.
Right. Yeah, it was really difficult at the beginning because the logic, the way people think when they writing English and Chinese is really different. So yeah, it took a lot of time for me. I attended like writing classes at my school before. So
that's great.
That helped out. Yeah.
How did you like before you started working for Jing Daily, were you interested in like Chinese social media, luxury, fashion, these topics, or did you become more interested in it after starting to work there?
I would say after working here, because before I only studied like finance and economics at school, so I really I knew nothing about luxury and fashion. I probably only know some like big luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Dior, and know they're super popular in China. But I don't know how the business work in China, how consumers look like in China. So after starting this job, I learned everything from like reading our previous coverage and talking to industry professionals, and also talking to brands and understanding their views on China. So that really helped a lot. But when it comes to social media, I think it comes naturally to me because I'm from China. I'm a Chinese, so I'm using Chinese social media platforms every day, like WeChat, Weibo. I have account on them both, and that's really take a lot of time of my day. So I think this is something that I really know about. So it's not that hard to report on this.
Right. What are now that you've been there for a while and you've become interested in these areas, what are some of your favorite topics to cover? Because we cover a lot of different topics at Jing Daily. There's lots of different things that fall within the luxury category. So what are some of your favorite topics to cover?
Yeah, so my favorite topic probably is understanding the changing consumer behaviors in China. Because now the demographic is really different for luxury brand than the like 10 years ago. Like younger people come to the market and what they want from brands, uh, whether it be product or marketing campaign, are so different from the previous generation. So that part is really, I think, bring value to our readers if we can give them like insights on what current Chinese consumer want. And also other topics I like to cover is like the brand strategy of individual luxury brands. I like to like do research on individual brands to understand like their history and how they enter market perhaps 10 years ago and what it changed as they are getting matured in this market, how they're working with like different Chinese consumers. Yeah, that's also the topic that I want to cover. I like to cover.
Yeah, those are definitely two fascinating areas, and they're changing so quickly. I want to go back to consumer trends. Could you share some you kind of started to mention it a little bit, but could you share some more specifics about some consumer trends that you see going on lately?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I actually thought about these questions. So I have to say, like, all trends that we're talking about today probably can be summarized in one phenomenon. That is the anxiety of Chinese consumers. So everything that we see, they like to be on digital, mobile, and they're looking for experience from like brands, and they like to post on social media, use social media as a way to distinguish themselves from others, can all be explained by their anxiety about the future. Because China is really in a very like unique social economic stage. We had a really fast economic growth since 2017-8 when the government started to reform the economy in the country. So everything happened really fast, and we like joined WTO and become a part of the globalization trend. So the social and economic change was really fast, and that can cause something hard for Chinese consumer to digest in such short period. So when I talk about their anxiety, it doesn't mean that they're in a truly bad economic or social situation. It's more about their mental state. They feel anxious. They want everything to move fast. They want to earn more money. They want to get more when they spend. So it's hard for them to be satisfied with what they are having right now. I always like to say like current consumers in China are really greedy and needy. They are always looking for like instant gratification to feel fulfilled. So that actually explains all kinds of consumer trends that we usually write at Jing Daily. And once brands can understand where those things come from, they can truly target Chinese consumers effectively, I believe.
So do you think I agree with what you're saying. I think that's a really great way to understand the situation. So do you think that because I definitely saw this in China. I think I started to feel that way after living there and being around everyone. It's just that feeling of always like wanting more. It was just like people that work so hard there, and everyone is just like, wanting the next biggest thing. I mean, you could see that with like iPhones. It's like the new iPhone would come out, and then everyone gets it. and then, you know, a year later, the next iPhone comes out and everyone gets that one.
Yes. Yes.
So do you think this anxiety is a fear that, is it a fear that they need to be better than everyone else, or is it a fear that like it's not going to be as good in the future? What do you think that anxiety is about?
I think it's more about like being better than other people,
like proving themselves.
Yeah, like I don't know, like because I grew up in a traditional Chinese family, so like my parents always like to compare me with other like kids in of their colleagues. So I got this mentality that I have to be better than others since I was young. I was a kid. So I guess that's something that is quite common in China too. So now people compare everything, like they compare work, they compare salary, and they compare the school that they go to. And now, like when I'm 27 now, like my friends now compare their husbands, whether they marry someone who are like maybe rich or have has a really good family background. So they compare everything. They want to look good. So speaking of that, I think that actually explains why people are really into like posting photos on social media platforms. I feel like it's really interesting, sometimes ridiculous. Like every time friends traveling abroad, they would post a lot of photos on WeChat. Like not only once, but every places that they visit, they will stop there and take a lot of photos and do the Photoshop stuff to beautify their photos, then post them on WeChat. And what they want from this section is to get as many likes as possible from their friends and family. In that way, they will feel unique and special.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right there is a good lesson for brands. It's like if you, especially for tourism, the tourism industry, it's like if you want to attract Chinese tourists, you have to your attraction, your hotel, your restaurant, whatever, your some activity or whatever, it has to be shareable. Like they have to be able to take really good pictures of it, and then it has to be, share worthy, and like they have to be able to show off. If it's not, then they're not going to be interested. Like, it's, like that's the whole. I mean, I feel like half the point of traveling is to say like I traveled, and then show your pictures.
Yes, and do you know the term 网红店? I don't know how to translate it in English. But there are tons of them in China, like in Shanghai, Beijing.
Yeah, it's like I mean, yeah, I don't know what it, cause I mean, we have those in the US too. I can't think of what people call them, but it's just the trendiest store, usually because they got really popular online. I mean, there's stuff like that popping up in New York City all the time. I remember last year there was some dough. It was called dough. It was like a cookie dough store, and the lines were insane, and it was so popular in New York City. So you're talking about like that kind of store that like somehow they get really popular from like social media, and then everyone wants to go there just so they can take a picture with like the product from that store.
Yeah, and maybe also 网红 war, like the war 墙. They have like really nicely painted war.
Oh, like murals.
Yes. Sometimes like all kinds of decorations in that stores make it 网红.
That's, I mean, I feel like pretty much everything that's popular on Instagram, it's like that kind of thing is 10 times more popular in China. Like if you have a really cool, like you said, wall or decorations or like a statue or, just anything that's really, easy to photograph and look trendy, it's going to be popular.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, Actually, on that, because I mean, when we're talking about these consumer trends, we're talking about like people in our age group, right? Like, you know, kind of the 80s, 90s, you know, now 2000s, like all these, I guess, millennials and Gen Z. And I feel like, I feel like we're always talking about these young consumers. You know, a lot of news is just like the power of the Chinese millennial consumer. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think that these millennials are the people that brands need to be reaching out to? Are they really that influential? Like, you know, I think there's a lot of debate on this topic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I personally think they are really powerful and influential when it comes to their purchasing power. Because now, like, the earliest bunch of millennials is almost close to 40 if they were born on 1980s. And they're actually, like, most of them, if they have a good job, they're now the middle class consumers in China. And I believe their demand for luxury brands should be high. And also, like, other generation, as they grow older, grow with their job and form family, their demand for luxury goods will also increase. And not to say actually the younger generation now are already crazy about all kinds of luxury brands. They just look for the best products they can find or the most unique product they can find to make them stand out of the crowd. But I think I get what you're saying. I feel like media probably is talking too much about Chinese millennial consumers. And not only talking too much, but they're probably talking in the wrong way. So they always like to group them based on their age group. Like we like to talk about 1980s, post 80s, post 90s, or now even post 95. I don't think it's scientific to really group them in this way, because in each group that they define, those people are still very diverse. They probably have one behavior that only is like obvious in other group and vice versa. So because these people like really talk to each other, they communicate with each other, and they are using social media, internet, they get information everywhere. So I don't think their behaviors or interests and preference would be really fixed. So it's not really good to group them and understand them in that way.
What do you think do you think it's more based on, let's say, like location or education level or types of job, or do you think like those are some more defining features besides just like age?
Yeah, I think location and education level might be better, because like I'm taking myself as an example. So I'm now really different from like all my friends who I met during my like middle school or even high school, because I'm coming from a small city in China, and most of my friends at that time like stayed in my hometown and found job there, so lived there and got married or whatever there. So now their preference for luxury brands or overall their consumption behavior are really different from mine. Like, because I'm now moving to the States for over 3 years, and I got my master degree here. So what I like and what I want definitely different from those people who are at my age. So it might be better to understand from their education background and also like oversee experience, whether they spend times living abroad or study abroad. I think that's also another very important criteria for brands to understand the people they're targeting.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that, you know, even if they've just traveled abroad a lot, they probably have a different view on the world and on brands, and they've seen, you know, other the way that other people live. They probably will think about what they buy differently. So
Yeah.
I would have to agree with that. And because I think that, like you said, I mean, like your experiences and what you're interested in are completely different than other people in your age group who have just stayed in the same city for their entire life. So I think, you know, there might be some defining features of your age group, but there are other things that, you know, people need to look at as well. I think that happens a lot with China, is just that people, you know, talk about China as a whole, and when it's such a massive country, they really need to like dial down, you know, who exactly they're talking about.
Yeah. And I think when brands try to understand their targeting consumer, it's really important for them to really be there, like interact with the targeting consumers, talk to them, observe them, their behaviors. So in that way, they can get like direct feedback from those people. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I want to kind of switch the topic a little bit to influencers, since that is what, you know, this podcast is all about, and talk about some influencers for the luxury industry, because I know that you report on this topic quite often, and you follow a lot of brands and what they're doing on social media. So I think you might have some good insight on this topic. So something that I hear kind of going back and forth, and I see this topic covered a lot, is the topic of celebrities versus influencers. And sometimes in China, I see a lot of people calling celebrities influencers, which gets it kind of confusing too. I think celebrities are celebrities and influencers are, you know, or KOLs are people who, you know, became famous from the internet. You know, I think they're two very different things. But so I wanted to talk to you about, you know, for the luxury industry, we see a lot of brands in the luxury industry working with celebrities, and what do you think? Do you think that celebrities are more influential, or you know, these KOLs, these influencers, are they more influential? What do you think on social media?
Sure. So I think there's no like general answers to this question. It really depends on like the goal of luxury brands, what they want to achieve with this campaign. So in general, I think celebrity are more influential when it comes to like reaching out to a mass market. Like even though we like to talk quite a lot about KOLs today at Jing Daily, but it's also a fact that not all Chinese people follow KOLs, or even if they follow them, they probably don't that care about what they do. So if the brands just want to like increase the awareness among the public, just really boost their popularity, I would say it's still like wiser to work with celebrities. But I see the rise of KOLs, influencers, and they're super helpful for brands if they have like specific goals. For example, like selling to those influencers' fans, that might be more effective compared to celebrities. Because I always like to use Becky Li as an example when it comes to this topic. I think Becky Li is really doing a great job in growing her fans and turning them into someone who are really loyal to her. So every time most of the time, she works with brands, she can help brands to sell out products that she promotes, because the purchasing power of her fans is really high. So I think So KOLs must be better if brands want to directly sell to people. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I'm just curious, if a brand is working with a celebrity, do you think people are probably seeing this, seeing the campaign on like Weibo, or, if a brand works with a celebrity, where are people seeing this product? What is it usually? What type of campaign?
I think, yeah, they will. I think they will appear on major social media like Weibo. You said also brands like official WeChat, but Weibo is more of the channel because most celebrity now have Weibo accounts. So once they work with brands, most of them would post something about this collaboration and even like engage with celebrities fans to like educate them about these products or the brands. So I think most campaign with celebrity happen on Weibo. And other places I would say celebrity cooperation would appear is on like TV shows or TV series. Like there's still a lot of like product placement happening in Chinese TV dramas. Like actors or actress, what they wear can be sponsored by brands. So in that way, it's like a soft advertisement because in the show they wouldn't say, oh, this is the clothes that's sponsored by the brand, but if those clothes are really like just look good on those celebrities, consumers or viewers will start to ask for what kind of brands are those clothes. So in that way, it also help brand to reach out to wider audience through those celebrities.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's still a popular way, and I heard someone in an event I was at, somebody was saying that that's actually a good way to maybe work with celebrities for a little bit less money, is instead of working with them on like a post, you can try and like work with the celebrity's stylist and give them some sample products. And then, if the celebrity wears your clothes to, an event, or they're, in the airport and get a photo taken with those clothes on, then, a lot of people might end up seeing those photos and wanting to know like what the celebrity is wearing, and that's like another way to kind of get promotion.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You were just mentioning Becky Li, and I really like her, and I agree she's really incredible when it comes to sales conversions. But I also do feel like Becky Li is part of this like group of influencers that it seems like every luxury brand wants to work with them. It's like Becky Li and Gogoboi and Mr. Bags. Yeah. And, there's a Shiliupo, like a couple of them. It's like, it just seems like every luxury brand wants to work with these same few influencers. And I mean, they're really good. But what do you think about that? Like, do you think that, like, I feel like there's so many other influencers that luxury brands could be working with, and then they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think working with the same few Chinese influencer are not good for both sides. Like, it's not good for influencers themselves because it's hard for them to establish a clear positioning in this market. It's gonna confuse brand. For example, Mr. Beck can work with like high-end luxury brands like Givenchy, but he also works on like fast fashion brand. Then that will definitely like confuse brands and also his audience. But also, I think it's not good for brand to work with just those influencers too often. Yeah, as you said, there are definitely lots of influencers in the market that they can work with, but I don't think they have like the channel to get to know those influencers very well, because currently the influencer market in China is really, really becoming too complicated for people who are not working there to figure out. Like even me, I cover this market, but I always like got confused why there's so many influencer, and when someone name an influencer, most of times I probably wouldn't know because I personally don't follow too many influencers, so I get to know their names through work. So yeah, I think this market definitely also overcrowded. That makes brands hard to figure out who is the right person and how they can best work with them.
Yeah, maybe because there's such a language barrier, the language barrier, and then the fact that it's different social media platforms, that it's a lot harder for brands to become educated on, who are some of the other top influencers out there. I guess there's a lot of information about, these couple of influencers. There's a lot of like English language information about them, and they've seen other brands use them, so they feel like that they're a safe bet. They know that they're not gonna, I don't know, waste their money. So they probably just think it's the safe thing to do.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you on this.
Yeah, which I think it's too bad, because like you said, there's a lot of influencers out there, but it's like you also said, it's really hard to weed through all of them and figure out which ones are good and which ones are bad, because a lot of these brands really need to have someone who can speak Chinese and go through all of the influencers' accounts and understand, are they really engaging with their fans? What type of content do they make? Things like that. So it's definitely a bit of a challenge.
Right. But adding to that, I want to add to this. I think it's also possible that many brands are still skeptical about this marketing channel. Because I recall my interview with a creative designer of a big brand in Italy, and he said something that he felt it's really hard for them to find someone who can truly represent their brand. And it took a lot of time for them to do it, and they didn't find good influencer afterward. And his conclusion is that if they don't feel anybody can represent them in China, they won't choose this marketing channel. So I think that also represents maybe a common mindset of international luxury brands in China, because influencer marketing is still very new area, even though this market is developing so quickly in China. But for outsiders, as you said, they don't speak Chinese and probably don't use Chinese social media that often. It's gonna be really like strange or like far away from their understanding.
Yeah, and it's probably hard to put trust in them, because they can't they can't just speak to the influencer unless the influencer happens to speak English. They're always going to be going through someone to speak to them, and it's really hard to like get to know someone and see if they're a good fit for your brand if you can't actually speak to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point, is that there's still a lot of skepticism about whether or not these influencers are a good fit, or if it's an effective. I think it's effective, but there's a lot of brands that still feel like it might not be, that effective. So that's definitely another issue. You mentioned that you personally don't follow too many influencers, but who are some that you do like to follow? Are there any?
Yeah, but most of them I follow because of my work. Like I follow all fashion influencer you mentioned before. Becky Li, Gogoboi, Mr. Bag, Shiliupo, and also some other like lifestyle influencer. It's hard to define. There's one called uh Cha. I think this person is one what used to be the fashion editors in big fashion magazine. Then he resigned and becoming a freelancing writers, and he opened this WeChat account, and it was really successful. So I follow him too. Among them, I think my favorite probably is Shiliupo, because I feel like she seems to be the most authentic one that I ever followed in China. Like she shares fashion trends and also like gossip, but also she shares like her personal feels and feelings about life and something like I probably just like her writing style, and I feel she's quite mature. Some of the articles that she wrote really like inspire me as a person. So that's why I like her. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's really important as well, which is another reason why brands, who can't read Chinese might have a hard time really understanding a Chinese influencer because, it's one thing to like, if we're talking about WeChat influencers, you really need to be able to read their articles and understand their writing style because WeChat content is very like heavy on the writing. Some of those articles are so long, they're huge, and and they're very like each successful account really has its own style of writing. So somebody like that's also something that's really hard to understand if you can't read it yourself.
Yeah,
definitely. I think, are there any accounts like not luxury? It could be anything, just any accounts, any other accounts that really stand out to you or that you follow just because you like them?
Can I take a look at my WeChat now?
Sure.
I need to look at it. You're saying like people like influencer on WeChat, right?
WeChat or Weibo or any of the social platforms. Just is there anybody out there that you really enjoy following their account? You think their content's really interesting? Could be any platform.
Actually, not really, because you know what? I just feel like today, all content on social media is like very shallow and superficial. Like when I read them, I feel most of them don't have any takeaways that will be useful for my life. Like I can read it for fun. As I said, I like Shiliupo, like because her writing is good and it makes me feel happy sometimes. But other things, I know they're like gossiping accounts, and also some accounts try to be educational. But that's just not the way I learn about stuff. I like to read books or like I need to something like systematically, not just to get it on social media. So that's why I feel it's hard for me to be attracted to all those like content produced by influencers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also I was thinking why it happened, because I like Instagram very much. I use it every day and I follow a lot of influencers on it. So I think it's also the problem that the current Chinese social media apps, Weibo, WeChat, they are not really picture friendly. That's my feeling. So if something similar in China have come out and influencer go to that space and post really nice pictures, I probably would like it because looking at pictures is much easier. It just let me relax. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny because that's actually what I was going to ask you is if you felt that way just because it was Chinese social media or whether you actually use other platforms in the US. So I think that's really interesting because sometimes I feel the same way too. I think that's why I still like Weibo a lot. I mean, there's these other like WeChat, there's a lot of really great content on there, but it's so much reading. Yeah, it's a lot of reading. And then, some of these other platforms like Douyin, it's like funny videos, but, I can get sucked into it, but I don't really feel like I'm gaining anything. I don't know. It's just kind of goofy videos.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get sucked into Instagram so easily. And I feel like Weibo is probably the closest thing to that, but it's just hard because I think Weibo just has there's so much going on. Like everything is there's so many words everywhere and little icons and pictures. Like it's just too much to look at sometimes. Like, and I think that's maybe sometimes a cultural thing too. I don't know. I feel like a lot of Chinese apps try and pack so much stuff in there. And it's kind of like Instagram is just a little bit more simple to look at.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like especially Weibo, I use it like I think 4 years or 5 years ago I started. Then I totally dropped it for a while since 2015. As you said, it's I think Weibo wants to be everything. Like they added all kinds of like features that we can see in other apps, but now it's becoming too crowded, and I couldn't get any really real value from it, and its design is kind of problematic. Like if they want to be like image friendly, or I know they're developing short video, they have Weibo story. If they want to be video or image friendly, they cannot present it in this way. It's not gonna helpful for brands to post videos and image on their platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they're trying to be everything to everyone instead of like focusing on just one thing. But yeah, I mean, I still think I like Weibo a lot. I just wish that that they could just make a little bit of adjustment to the way it looks might make it easier to. There's just like I said, there's just too much going on sometimes. Yeah. That's really interesting though. That I mean, do you think and sorry, this is just me thinking, like do you think that some of this has to do with like your age as well, like the fact that you're busy working and you just got other things? Like, do you think that maybe younger people are, especially younger people in China are still, that they don't have the same feelings about social media that you might have, like you're saying that you feel like it's a little bit shallow or, things like that. Do you think that maybe it's different for them?
Yeah, I believe it's different for them because I'm working, so most of the time I need to be efficient. But I know, like as you mentioned, Douyin, the short video platform, and also Kuaishou, those short video platform is really popular in China among like younger people. Like influencers there are also young, like in their 2000s. So I just feel like it's definitely true that younger people will find social media much more interesting than I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a challenge for brands is, how to reach out to, because people like your age, my age, in China, they have more income than, younger people might have, but they also have less time to be spending on social media. So I think that's also a challenge for brands, how to stand out on all of these platforms and capture people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I kind of want to just a couple more questions before we finish up, but kind of on that line, because these platforms are getting so mature and saturated, and like you said, there's just so much going on. Is there anything that you've seen lately, like over the past couple of months, that is really standing out to you as far as like a type of content or a feature or a really cool campaign, just anything that's really stood out to you that a brand is doing over the past couple of months?
So I'm going to talk about the Prada's project in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
They just renovated a historical site called Rong Zhai. So it's more about art. And I think on the launching party, they definitely invited several fashion influencers to be there. So, but overall, this project is about like renovating, restoring the traditional Chinese culture, and that really resonates well with the Chinese millennials. And also, Rongzai is an art space. And art is something that Chinese millennials also very, very interested currently. So yeah, that's why this project, this campaign that Prada did in Shanghai is truly amazed me.
Yeah, I remember seeing. I think you might have written an article about that, and like, do you think that? I guess because when you talk about a brand like a Western brand that's trying to do something more traditionally Chinese, I feel like sometimes that could either go really badly or it could be really popular and successful. So what do you think that Prada did that made it that showed that they understand like China, or that they're being respectful of Chinese culture, because I've just seen sometimes that like a brand has tried to do something that they think is, traditional historical Chinese culture, and it's totally wrong.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly how Prada started this idea, but I bet they did a really good research on this area, because I understand like there are many brands try to do, like, just take an example from all those Chinese Spring Festival special collection did by luxury brands. Like this year was the year of dog, and they designed like dog themed products, but it didn't really work very well among Chinese consumer, because people feel like the connection between traditional Chinese elements and luxury brands are super weird. But Prada, what they did was totally like spend money in renovating this historical site. So I think this place is already there, and they just spend money and help it to be renovated again. So in that way, they didn't really over-interpret the traditional Chinese culture. They just do what they can do. They restore, they protect everything without over like interpretation of it. So in that way, it lowered the risk of offending Chinese people. So that's why it might work for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's really interesting. Yeah, they didn't try and put like their own twist onto it. They just kind of like respected the space and just showed that they wanted to preserve the space and bring it back to what it used to be instead of trying to turn it into something else.
Yeah, I think respect is really important when it comes to this topic, because I feel like many luxury brands, when they approach Chinese culture, they only think the culture as something that can be used by them to talk to Chinese consumers. But they ignore that Chinese consumers are people who are like totally coming out of this culture. So they know this culture definitely better than you do. Like if they don't agree with your interpretation, then it means that your interpretation is wrong. So like in this way, Prada is really like leave it alone, just do what they can. So that's really respect, and that's what Chinese consumer would like to see for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I definitely think that you were able to provide a different perspective, and I think it'll be interesting for people to get some. I think we talked about a lot of insights about the Chinese consumer, so I think that's going to be really interesting for people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, I hope my answer will be helpful.
Definitely.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Yiling. You can find links to her contact info and everything that we discussed during the episode in the show description or in the show notes on ChinaInfluencerMarketing.com. If you liked this episode and know somebody else who might like it too, please don't forget to share it. Really, really appreciate it when you spread this with other people. It is such a niche podcast that it's really through word of mouth that people are discovering it. So I really appreciate it if you share with anyone who you think could find this information useful. So anyway, thank you and talk to you next week.